So I want to start off this video by prefacing and saying I am not in any ways calling the Rockets a bad team or really criticizing them much at all in this video with the quote unquote negative things that I am going to say. I'm just going to give my opinion on why I think this Rockets team should make a move and needs to make a move to be a serious title contender this season. They're ahead of schedule. I get it. I know their owner said he doesn't want to rush things. He doesn't want to overpay. He doesn't want to make a big move. He wants to see how the roster develops. But I have a move that I think they should be absolutely 1,000,000% pursuing. And I'm going to talk about that later in the video. But first of all, I'm going to talk about the flaws of this team and why I don't believe, as they're currently constructed, they're a championship contender. Before we hop into it, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Help me push towards the 2,000 subscriber mark on the channel. I'm uploading multiple NBA videos every single day. Would really appreciate it if y'all do subscribe. Without further ado, let's hop right into it. So rough loss tonight at home against the Heat. They got some players who wound up being ejected late in the game. Jalen Green and Amin Thompson, although again, it was late. Giving up 27 to Tyler Hero, a Heat team that did not have Jimmy Butler and still beat the Rockets in Houston. Not the type of loss that you want to take as the Rockets, considering they were only missing Tari Eason from their regular rotation of healthy players tonight. And honestly, it was one of those games that just was kind of all over the place, not great. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't a terrible game, but they only scored 100 points, only 39%, 32.5% from three. The efficiency certainly wasn't there. Jalen Green has not been good, and I think that is something that obviously can be totally kept in mind. But I do believe as well that there is some moves to make for this team, because the biggest thing that this Rockets team does not have right now is end of game closing scoring, and in general, a go-to offensive guy. And it matters offensively during the rest of the game as well, but I feel like it especially matters late in the game, in the last 5 minutes of a close game, last 2 minutes of a close game. All that type of stuff is where the Rockets' biggest struggles lie. So you look at the standings, they're having a great year. Again, I'm not criticizing this team at all. They're the 3 seed in the West. They're half a game back of the 2 seed. They're having themselves a heck of a year and deserve a lot of credit for playing good basketball. And I would say definitely exceeding expectations as well. Like they've been really, really solid this year. But when you look at the numbers, Fred VanVleet has had a really down year shooting the ball. 38%, 32% from three is just not cutting it at all. He is an elite assist to turnover point guard, 100%, but still too many struggles offensively for him as a scorer this year. Jalen Green started the season great, the first like 5 or so games, and since then has been terrible. He's down to 41%, 32.5% from three, still averaging 19 a game. He's shooting too many shots is the honest truth right now. And I think there is certainly a world in which he could be a guy they might look to trade as well if they were looking to upgrade this roster. Those two guys, by the way, VanVleet and Jalen Green, we'll come back to them. But when you look at the rest of the roster, Dylan Brooks is playing his role. He's shooting the 3 ball well. He's a very good defender. Jabari Smith, would love to see him shoot the ball better. He's not quite the shooter he was in college, but he's having a pretty good year. 35% from 3 on 5 attempts a game is solid. He's a decent rebounder. Good small ball 5, can play the 4 as well. Versatile defender, good player. Alperen Sengun still struggling from the paint a bit, but not like he was early in the year. He's up to 51.5% inside the arc. Shooting the 3 ball terribly. Really doesn't need to be shooting the 3, I don't think, very much, because he's not shooting it well at all. And Amin Thompson is still struggling from the 3, despite the fact that he is a really, really impactful player in terms of his defense and his effort. Tari Eason, I expect the shooting for him will go in the right direction, which I think is something that they can count on as well happening at some point this year. But overall, I mean, besides that, that's pretty much the rotation. Like, they have backup centers in Steven Adams and Jock Landale. Neither of those guys are world beaters, but they will get the job done. This is a team that can, again, play small as well, with Jabari Smith at the 5, Tari Eason at the 4. And they can go a lot of different versatile ways in which they don't really have to play a backup center in the playoffs. And then they obviously have Cam Whitmore as well, who's still shooting the ball really bad this year, but has some talent and I think some promise. And then Reed Shepherd, who's been really disappointing his rookie season, but I do think will develop into a good player. He's just not there yet. With that being said, that's pretty much the roster. The thing about this team, when you look at the numbers this season, is in terms of their overall season. If we look at the season-long numbers, they're the 13th ranked offense in the league, 112.4 offensive rating. Defensive rating is second best in the league, behind only the Thunder at 105.9. They're having a great year. They're an elite defensive team. They're winning games with defense 100%. But their net rating, I mean, 6th in the league. That's a pretty contenderish net rating for sure. They look like they are in that top tier on a lot of nights. The problem with this team comes in the clutch. When you look at the clutch numbers, which is last 5 minutes of a 5-point or less game, they have played a lot of clutch games. They're tied for 4th in the league with 18 clutch games, and they have won 10 of them. They're 10-8, so give them credit for that. That's good. And they've played, well, tied for the most clutch minutes in the entire league this season, so they're playing a lot of clutch games. The problem is, when you look at the offensive rating, They have the 9th worst offensive rating in the clutch in the league this season. Their defensive rating is 106.6, which is still very good. Not quite as good as what it is otherwise. The Magic in the clutch have been ridiculous, by the way. 81.6 is bizarre. They are so good in the clutch this season. But either way, the Rockets, I mean, they're 10-8, but they have a negative 2.1 net rating in clutch minutes this season, which is certainly not ideal. Puts them only 17th in the league and definitely below average to have a negative 2-point net rating in the clutch. And that furthers the point that I'm making about the biggest issue with this team being the fact that they don't succeed at a high level, especially offensively in the clutch. You know who would fix that? De'Aaron freaking Fox, former clutch player of the year, a guy who is potentially going to ask out in Sacramento. Now, I will say, disclaimer, I don't think that Sacramento will trade De'Aaron Fox unless he basically demands a trade. With that being said, De'Aaron Fox is one of those players who is of the caliber of star, especially with a contract that is not bad for this year and next year, that he would get serious trade interest. And the Rockets have a ton of draft pick assets and have a decent amount of young talent and interesting guys as well that they could potentially include to try to facilitate a trade. So this trade right here that I put together works. De'Aaron Fox and Kevin Huerter for Fred VanVleet, Cam Whitmore, who's got some youth and some potential, as well as 3 unprotected first-round picks. That's a lot of picks. That's a lot of assets. And a couple of these picks could be really good. Brooklyn 27 first, Phoenix 2027 first. This pick especially could wind up being an absolute freaking gold mine. Like that could easily wind up being a top 5 pick. I would not be surprised at all. Wouldn't be shocked if the Brooklyn pick is a lottery pick as well. The Houston pick in next year's draft won't be as good, but that would be the 3rd and the worst of the unprotected first-round picks. First-round picks are worth a ton in this league. And even for a star like De'Aaron Fox, I think the Kings would be interested in that type of deal. And here's the thing. If the Rockets wanted to, they could shift this trade around as well. They could always include another pick. I mean, when you look at the draft picks, they are not in a position where they are limited in terms of tradable draft assets. Only one of their first-round picks are included in this trade. They have an OKC pick. They have a Dallas pick. They have another Phoenix pick. Like, they have a lot of other assets that they can still work with. And then the other thing that I think is worth considering as well is the fact that they could trade Jalen Green. Now, the thing about Jalen Green for De'Aaron Fox is that would make this a much tougher trade financially. But if you take Kevin Huerter out of the trade for the Sacramento Kings, I'm not a trade wizard expert or trade machine expert, but I am trying my best. If they were to add Jalen Green and Steven Adams contracts plus all those assets, it still fails. Oh, it exceeds the Kings incoming slightly, actually, because of the Jalen Green contract. Okay, hold on. So if I take out Steven Adams and I replace him with Jayshawn Tate instead, this should work, I think. Oh my gosh, it exceeds the Rockets incoming in. Okay, well, this is complicated. I am 100% sure that there is a way to get the salaries here to work. Would it be kind of complicated? Maybe. Do you maybe include Uncle Jeff instead of, we'll take Aaron Holiday out and we'll include Uncle Jeff. Would that work? It might wind up being a little bit more complicated because of salary constraints and these teams being first apron hard capped, whatever. But here we go. Okay, this one exceeds it as well. All right. So, point being, I'm struggling right now to find the perfect Jalen Green included trade, but I'm 100% confident that with the assets that the Rockets have in terms of their draft picks as well as these contracts, I mean, they could find a way to make a Jalen Green centered trade for De'Aaron Fox work as well, which would be potentially maybe more enticing to the Kings if they still see the possibility of Jalen Green developing into a star. And again, this is the Kings front office. I wouldn't put it past them, even though I personally am not very high on Jalen Green at this point in his career. My point is there are multiple avenues in which the Rockets could very easily acquire De'Aaron Fox and immediately solve that clutch time issue once and for all. And he would give them that number one go-to option. So maybe I droned on too long about the trade possibilities, but stuff is interesting to me. And I hope it's interesting to y'all as well. Point being, there is a lot of ways in which Houston could go acquire De'Aaron Fox, and De'Aaron Fox would solve so many issues about this team like that. They add De'Aaron Fox to their team without giving up a significant chunk of their rotation, which I think they could do. Really giving up only one rotation guy in either VanVleet or Jalen Green. And you immediately become a serious title contender, like this season and for the next several seasons. It would immediately make the Rockets serious contenders, and it's the type of move that if De'Aaron Fox requests a trade, even before he requests a trade, I'd be calling Sacramento and going, yeah, we're giving y'all 3 picks. We'll give y'all whichever player y'all want between those two guys. We'll give you a couple of young assets. Like, we will find a way to make this trade work. That's what I'd be doing if I were the Rockets, because De'Aaron Fox would be a transformational player for this roster. And I think that they need to make moves in order to be a serious title contender. But when they're this good and this young, I don't see why not. I hope y'all did enjoy the video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. I'll be back with more NBA content very, very soon. I appreciate y'all. Peace.